Was Deborah available? No, so we'll move on to the next one, and that was a question from Belinda, who is at the Museum of Fire here at Penrith, Minister Ayres.
I'm speaking on Deborah's behalf, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
I didn't. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry about that. She's running back for a physio appointment, so I'm jumping.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, both of us live in the same household. We both have very small businesses. We are sole operators and we don't have any employees. It's just ourselves. I run an entertainment business, which has been caned for the last 16 months. And she's running a natural therapies business. Together, we don't even earn $75,000. And we've looked on all of the sites, both federal and state, to see anything that would apply to us, and we can't see any criteria that we'd fit into. Are there any?
Yes, there are. There are COVID micro business grants that are available for their tax-free payments of up to $1,500 per fortnight. If you contact Service New South Wales, they will be able to provide that information to you. The only thing you won't be able to do is claim both the micro business support from the New South Wales government and the COVID-19 disaster payment from the Commonwealth.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. And I'll hand over now to Belinda from the Museum of Fire here at Penrith.
Thanks, Kate. I guess my question's around what the money is intended for. So we know we're going to qualify for some funding because we've had a 100% downturn. So I guess the question is, it's supposed to be to help keep our staff. We've had to stand down all of our staff, but we've also got to pay bills. Are we supposed to be using this grant money to pay our bills or to maintain our staff who we're not paying because we've had to stand them down?
Yeah, so Belinda, the COVID-19 disaster payment from the Commonwealth is the supplement that is paid to individuals who have had to be stood down. So this is why it's really important to understand the delineation between supporting businesses and supporting individuals. If you've had to stand down staff, you should be encouraging those staff members to visit Services Australia, make contact with Services Australia about accessing those COVID-19 disaster payments. That's the payment that's made available based on the number of hours that a person has dropped, and that's the payment to support them. And that's also about ensuring that they stay connected to your business. The state government business payment is about covering the costs associated with your business, those overheads that don't go away, and about keeping your business as functional as it possibly can be during this lockdown period. Now, we know that the support payments that we're paying are not going to cover every single cost, but they are about putting cash flow into your business to keep your business as functional as it possibly can. The one connection point between these two things is that we've asked people not to, standing down is a perfectly reasonable HR facility or industrial relations facility that's available to you. What we don't want you to do, though, is sever the connection between your employee and the employer. So you need to be able to maintain your workforce numbers, even if they're in a stood down environment, to be able to access those New South Wales payments.
Thank you. That was my question, that if they're stood down, can we still legitimately be saying that we're maintaining that level even though they're not being paid? And so that was my main point behind my question.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to recognise that the stand down arrangements that exist in law in Australia are designed for this very purpose. We know that there's extreme circumstances where businesses are not generating enough revenue to be able to pay their staff, but we don't want to see, particularly if it's for what we know is a short period of time, and in many respects a somewhat artificially created one by the government in order to protect people's health. Standing down doesn't mean that you're letting workers go. It's about keeping those workers connected to your business so that when we can lift these restrictions, whether they be lifting a restriction for construction work to continue or whether they be lifting restrictions that allow people a lot more mobility across our community, we know that if you've still got staff attached to your business, they can come straight back into work and your business can mobilise quite quickly. And the whole purpose of our system of supporting businesses and the Commonwealth supporting individuals is all about making sure that when we lift these restrictions, even if it's incremental, that any business can mobilise as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you. Thanks. The next question is from Eric Showing, and Eric had a question, Minister, about returning to work for particularly construction and trades. Over to you, Eric. Sorry, you're just on mute, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Minister. I think the question is that we understand with the current Delta stream is quite extreme. That's why you shut down the construction activities totally. To a lot of our clients, actually, still a surprise because they understand the knock-on effect to the rest of the economy. One of the questions being asked in the last few days is that we understand even from the government, there are a few ministers that are supporting that and there are a few ministers who do not support that. The question is for outdoor activities that will require minimum contact, and if they maintain their hygiene in terms of COVID-19, is there any possibility for the government to review that decision in the coming weeks rather than absolutely possibly will be locked down for the next 2 weeks?
Eric, the shutting down of construction for a 2-week period was designed to reduce mobility across metropolitan Sydney. We know that people working in construction and the supply chain that sits behind it has a lot of mobility attached to it. And so the decision to pause construction activities was about reducing mobility. Whilst we know that the largest rate of infection is happening in Fairfield, Liverpool and Canterbury Bankstown LGAs, we know that people from those LGAs, because of their work, have to move around the city. Mm-hmm. We saw that here in Penrith, where we had a site of concern in Emu Plains, and you can see this right across metropolitan Sydney. Our intention is not to keep construction closed one day longer than the 30th of July. We want construction sites back open on the 31st. We will be looking at options over the next 48 hours that give us the opportunity to communicate to construction or to the construction industry and to their wider supply chain about what activity can take place next week, because we know that this is not a type of activity that you can just flick the switch on. So we'll be providing advice before the end of the week to construction businesses about what they can do next week to start preparing their sites to be reactivated. That's going to mean things like taking deliveries, making sure hoarding is functional, ensuring that all the utilities, are ready to go, so that from the 31st of July, we're in a position to allow construction to return. The biggest issue with construction is the sheer size of the multiplier or the supply chain that exists in it. So even though your business may not be hammering a nail into a piece of timber, or you may not be putting the roofing on a house, or you may not be putting the steel into a new building, you might be providing a lot of services that allow that to happen, and so therefore you're impacted too. So we want to minimise that to this 2-week period, provide that advice to the construction sector in the next 48 hours so they know what they can do next week to start preparing their sites. And then that also allows a lot of the supply chain to understand the time frame as well. But it's absolutely our intention to reopen construction on the 31st of July.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic news, Minister, because I know many of our members have been asking that question. So far, so good. Just a reminder to anyone that's come in a little bit late, if you do want to put a question, please pop it in the chat box. We're working our way through. And when it's your turn, I'll introduce you and you can ask away. But if you could pop it in the chat box so that we know that you're waiting to answer. I also have a question, Minister, from somebody that didn't have a video on their screen. Is the government looking to implement the rapid antigen testing that's TGA approved? So these are the tests that can give approximately 15-minute turnaround, which could open up in the future opportunities at state borders with tourism and particularly for our travel and hospitality operators. And is this something that the state government would look at implementing and or at least open up the discussion?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So the technology around testing is changing rapidly, as you would expect with such a large volume of testing taking place around the world. Businesses that are involved in diagnostic testing for health have been looking at ways in which to improve the quality of the test, improve the reliability of the test, and also improve how quickly a test result can be returned. And the concept of antigen testing and even antibody testing has existed for a long time. One of the big challenges with it over the last 18 months is that it's not as accurate as what the PCR test has been. Now, that is changing quickly, and we will have to make some adjustments and pivot towards new technology. But given the PCR testing that we've been undertaking now for 18 months, and particularly during the course of this outbreak, having a more accurate test allows our contact tracers to focus their work where it's most required. So even just having a test that is 5 to 10% less accurate would mean contact tracers having to do a lot of extra work on people that are essentially false positives. Now, as that technology improves, the New South Wales government will absolutely be looking to bring in rapid antigen testing into our testing environment. It's something that I think could easily be utilised in particular work sites, particularly highly mobile work sites, where a test might determine whether a person can come onto that work site. Something like construction, which has been shut down for the last week and will be shut down for the remainder of next week, could easily look to use something like this in the future. I talk to the Chief Health Officer, Kerry Chan, about this issue quite regularly, and she's actually finalising I'll call it a paper to come to government about the next steps in the evolution of the testing regime. So yes, it's part of our medium term or even short to medium term, particularly as that technology has been updated and improved quite rapidly over the last particularly 6 months. So whilst I think PCR testing will stay as the primary mechanism for testing, at least for a number of months, my expectation is over time, you'll see different types of tests, including the rapid antigen testing coming in as it plays its role in the testing environment.
Right, great, thank you. And our next question is from Cynthia Painter in relation to micro grants and also applying for a sole trader pandemic payment. Over to you, Cynthia.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Minister, for joining us. I can imagine this is quite a big forum, so thank you for being on point for these questions coming firing at you. So I was on a Service New South Wales for 2 hours yesterday waiting to talk to someone, and I appreciate that they have quite a lot of people to talk to, and wanting to get some answers around micro business, which is the only grant that I would be qualifying for. The sort of questions I had was like, when does it open? Is it backdated? Which financial year are they talking about for that 30 to 75? Because if it's the last financial year we had, is JobKeeper therefore included as part of turnover? Because I'm quite on that border as far as we got really hammered last year. So on that border, if it was that financial year, and also whether you could get the pandemic payment for the first portion, depending on when the grant would actually start. The problem was not only being on hold for 2 hours, which I get, and I had a most lovely lady that I talked to. We had a fabulous chat as part of that. She had no answers. She was actually commenting and communicating with someone via a community notice board to try and get those answers, but even then they didn't have answers on when it might start, when it might be backdated to, which financial year they thought might be the previous financial year. it wasn't actually a good use of time at all because I didn't have any answers. Do you have any clarity on when we're actually going to get those criteria and potentially answers to those questions?
Yeah, first of all, I will apologise for the experience, both the delay and the fact that when you got through, that person wasn't in a position to give you the answers that you needed. My understanding is that those the ability to apply for those micro business payments is open now, or will be open in before the end of July. I also I answered this a little bit earlier. My understanding is that you won't be able to access both the micro business payment as well as the COVID disaster payment from the Commonwealth. So you'll need to work out which is the best option for you. But I'll make sure that I get your details, Cynthia, from the team at the Chamber and provide you with those exact dates and the process for you being able to access the micro business payment. And that might even be useful for other members of the Chamber as well who are looking to do the same thing, which given we've already had 2 questions on it today, I'll make sure that information gets distributed.
Yeah, that would be great because obviously there is this crossover period. If it doesn't, because what I was trying to get from them yesterday was, and they said yesterday maybe it's opened at the end of the month, maybe it's not. So it was really quite interesting that Service New South Wales couldn't give me that answer even when they were directly checking themselves. That was yesterday afternoon. I get that these things change quickly and seeing chat box stuff come through.
Yeah, I think it's the 26th.
Yeah, fantastic. So, but then even then, if it's not backdated, that was where they're going, well, mate, they actually said to me, maybe you can get the pandemic payment and cut it off for when the next one, so you're not doing both at the same time. Basically, though, I'm left in a quandary of not being able to access anything and waiting for the micro grant to come in, hoping that the criteria, I can meet the criteria, but then if I'm not, then I'm having to go back and do something else. But I don't even know if I can get the pandemic payment because of being a sole trader, not a worker. So it's sort of in the cracks.
Yeah. So what I'll do,
Well,
Stacey, I was just going to say, I'll get Stacey to put her email in the chat box. And if anybody would like that follow-up information that Minister Ayres is going to email through to the Chamber, please just contact Stacey directly and we can add you on to have the email after the Q&A today with some of that further information. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Great. And our next question is from Ellie from Titanium Traffic Plans in relation to help for recovery for construction after the lockdown. Are you there, Ellie?
Yep. Hi, Minister. Thank you for joining us and thank you for answering the questions. And just going to say, it's really good to see faces that don't live in my house. Been feeling very lonely lately. So my question is, our business is a small business and we are part of the construction industry supply chain. So we do traffic control plans. So obviously we're in shutdown at the moment. My question is when we are able to go back to work, what sort of long-term recovery help will be available to businesses like us who are like the effects of this 2 weeks is going to be long-term for us. So will there be help available? And if so, what will it be?
Yeah, so Ellie, you'll still be able to access the business support payments that come through Service New South Wales. The longevity of how long those payments go for, we haven't determined. So it's quite, I'm not going to say that we will definitely do this, but because we still don't know the full magnitude of the decisions to do lockdowns, as well as some quite targeted impacts on industries, construction is one. You know, hospitality is another that, whilst it has a slightly different supply chain, it's actually had a much more ferocious impact over the 18 months. So there will be an opportunity for us to consider how long those support payments stay in place to allow businesses to recover. Ideally, we want people to be able to trade their way out of the challenges. We've all had to, every business has had to take a hit in some form or another. Whilst COVID has allowed some businesses to actually increase sales, they've had to adjust and pivot. Other businesses like yours have been impacted by the decision of government to shut construction, so therefore your traffic management activities don't take place. But my advice to you would be to make sure that you apply for the business support payments through Service New South Wales, and continue to monitor the government's position and advice post the lockdown about whether that continues, because we do know that it will take a little bit of time for businesses to get back on their feet.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Great, thank you. And the next question, Minister, was from Susan at Balance at Work, and it relates to the fines for employers. Are you there, Susan?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great, thank you.
Hi.
Go.
Hi, Stuart. Thanks for being on the spot and answering all these questions. I know it can't be easy. So as of midday today, there's now fines for employers who request their staff to come into the office, $10,000 fine, if staff can work from home. But we haven't really been given much detail about that. Like, how's that going to be monitored? You know, is there a process for staff to report that somewhere? Or, you know, I think it's important for employers to understand it, and it hasn't really been given a lot of emphasis.
Yeah, I understand that fair trading and safe work are going to play the monitoring role. We think that they're the most logical oversight body. Whilst we've changed the public health order to allow for a fine to be issued, I think it's really important that this is about making sure that employers and employees are well engaged with each other during the course of this pandemic. I know that sometimes that can be a challenging exercise for business operators, but this is really about trying to find a degree of common sense. But practically speaking, the health order is drafted very specifically to say that if you can work from home, you should work from home. And so the increase in the fine is really a message to businesses that you need to be making sure that if you've got an employee that can work from home, that's the preferred place for them to work. Now, a lot of businesses and a lot of activity can't take place in the home. We understand that, we recognise that. And so if your business is a practical business, if it requires some presence in a particular site that's not a person's home, that is accounted for in the way that this is going to be administered. In many respects, this is just about sending a message to the very small number of employers, if they even exist at all, who are unnecessarily asking employees, particularly to come into office work environments where we're trying to minimise mobility, minimise the amount of people at home, moving around the city, and forcing them to come into an environment when they could work from home. Now, if employees want to work from the office, there's nothing that stops them from doing that. But we would say that it's really important that everyone recognises that reduced mobility is absolutely critical to reducing the rate of infection, which is why the health orders are written as if you can work from home, you should work from home.
Okay, thank you. My question, I guess, was coming from the point of view also that there could be quite a bit of dispute between employers and employees about whether someone can work from home or not. And it would be good to have an objective information to refer people to so that they can then make those decisions and have genuine discussions with their staff, with trying to keep it all quite amicable instead of adding more stress to people at this time.
I think that's a good point, Susan. I'm not sure whether fair trading, safe work and the Small Business Commissioner has got any information that they've published around dispute resolution or even engaging with staff, but I'll put that on my list of material to chase down and distribute that back through the chamber.
Excellent, thank you.
Great, thanks for that. And Minister Ayres, there was another question that had been put by a member that's not able to pose it, and it was more a comment or a request that after particularly the announcements of last Friday, there was a state of confusion, particularly for construction area and small business. And the request was that when there are announcements of that type, can it be immediately uploaded onto the website? People were madly dashing to have a look, and there wasn't that information readily available. So I guess the question was, is that something that will be looked at so that it's readily available once an announcement's made? And we appreciate that it is done in an urgent situation, but it was a bit confusing last week. Yeah.
Yeah, Kate, absolutely. I think that's a very valid point. As the person who led the engagement with around 270 heads of industry and substantial businesses right around the state immediately after that press conference, I would have always been in a position where my preference would be to engage with industry early, make adjustments. However, in this circumstance, based on the timing of the advice and the need to provide that information quickly, it probably would have led to anywhere between 24 and 48 hours delay before we made that announcement. So that's definitely not my preferred course of action by any stretch of the imagination. My last 3 or 4 days has been occupied substantially with trying to fill in that gap that was created. A good example of that was our engagement with industry that has allowed for the authorised workers list to be published, which is now on the service or the newsouthwales.gov.au website. That has allowed many businesses in Penrith to continue to function as normal. That authorised workers list came directly from my engagement and discussions with industry that afternoon. Admittedly, we didn't get up online until about 11:30 that night, and that then allowed a number of people who, say, lived in Liverpool but ran a cafe in Penrith to be able to come and do their takeaway coffees, for instance. But so that's by all means not our normal course of action. There is a little bit of emergency response that's required in the way that we're operating at the moment. But where we can't do that, rest assured, one thing we will absolutely do is move very quickly to engage with industry and with businesses and provide that information as quickly as possible. But we will always endeavour to be prepared for that, so that once the Premier makes an announcement about government policy, people can access that information as quickly as possible rather than having to wait in a vacuum like they did on Saturday for around about 13 or so hours.
Yeah, I appreciate it was all on the hop, but yeah, creating that confusion for business owners. Just a reminder to anybody that's entered the meeting late, if you do want to put a question, pop it in the chat box, and we are working our way through. There was a question a little bit earlier on. I'm not sure if Hania is still on the line. Hania Radvan, just in relation to accessing payments and the best place to do so. Is Hania still on?
He's not. He had to pop off.
Okay, so Hania's question, Minister, was do members apply for JobSaver and business support all through Service New South Wales? Should they jump onto the Service New South Wales app or website for any of those payments?
So information is provided to you through the Service New South Wales website, but I've said this a couple of times, but just to kind of reinforce it, for payments to the individuals, so for your employees, they are going to come from the Commonwealth through Services Australia. That's the COVID disaster payment that's paid to an individual based on the loss of hours. For business support work, it is through Service New South Wales. And so jump on the Service New South Wales website or make your applications and submissions through there. I know Hani is also involved in our arts and cultural community, and Create New South Wales is also doing a number of tailored support payments for not-for-profits in the arts and cultural sector, and information about that particular support arrangement, whilst also available on New South Wales, Service New South Wales, it might be a little bit easier to find on Create New South Wales, which is their agency inside the New South Wales government. So anyone else who's either engaged or perhaps involved in other arts and cultural community groups or organisations in addition to their businesses, Create's also a good place to have a look at for targeted support in that sector.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Christopher Galloway about working from home and training. Are you on the line there, Chris?
I am. Hello. I didn't
Thank
think
you.
I'd actually get to talk. Hello, Minister. I run a company called Miriamidagar, which is a non-for-profit landscaping business, in essence. Some of our guys don't have. We're trying to provide training whilst we're in stand down. Some of them don't have computers at home. Are they allowed to go to our office as long as they follow the COVID safe protocol?
Yeah, so I think so you can still attend. You can attend work or education if that work or education can't be taken from home. So if they're coming to your workplace to undertake an activity that they can't do at their home, that's permissible underneath the health order.
Okay, great. That's great. Because I don't want to waste this time. Very rarely do they're not on the tools, so I'll upskill.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And our next question is from Ben Halcombe from Seven Chairs Photography. It may have been answered, Ben. It was in relation to the micro grant and rental payments. Sorry, Ben, we can't hear you. You're off mute. Might be something to do with your audio. Do you want me to read it out?
I can't see Ben, but I'm going to guess what his question might be, and I'll say from a micro support payment, we've discussed it a couple of times. Applications open 26th of July, but there are also a number of tenancy support arrangements that exist as well, and there's a protection from eviction arrangement that's also been put in place. So it would be, I think, important for people who are not engaging directly with their landlord to have a clear understanding around what those eviction protection arrangements look like, and they're also available on our business updates on Service New South Wales.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think, and a few of Ben's other questions I think have been answered. Our next question is from Kirsty Jackson, and she's specifically in the area of childcare. So are you on the line there, Kirsty?
Yeah, hi Kate, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Hi Minister, thanks for your time. I'm a childcare owner in Plains, and just a few questions regarding the support that we've been given. Not a lot comes through for early childhood. We feel like we kind of get ignored a little bit. And just wondering, in terms of now we've been listed as an essential service, but we're not eligible for vaccines. I know you touched on that earlier. You know, if we want to have the fine, but I know for me myself, I can't do that one. I'm waiting for Visor and I'm still not eligible to get it, which is concerning when we're on the front line with so many in our community. You know, I've still got a lot of children attending, a lot of parents attending, and it's just a little bit scary. And also, I guess I have some questions about the gap fee waiving, and there's a rumour there's a childcare package release. Is that true?
Christy, can you just say that last bit? I just missed that last bit.
Yeah, so just a question around the gap fee waiving.
Christy, I was going to say, Kirsty, we can't hear you properly, but I did have your list of questions. I think it was in relation to the gap fee waiving, Minister, and eligibility as frontline workers for vaccine, as childcare is now essential.
I'll take the gap fee waiving on notice. It's not my area of speciality, but I will get that information back through the chamber. With relation to vaccines, vaccination is available to every Australian right now. If you are under the age of 60, you can have a conversation with your GP around accessing the vaccination that they have available through their GP network. That will overwhelmingly be the AstraZeneca vaccine that's supplied to GPs right across Sydney. It's also now being supplied to pharmacies also across the region. You can, if you're 40 and over, you can register with New South Wales Health to access the Pfizer vaccine that's being distributed through a number of our New South Wales health clinics. There is one that is operating at Nepean, or just next to Nepean Hospital. And so the reason why we have an age profile around accessing vaccine is because we know that people who are older are more at risk of being hospitalised or being very seriously ill, their increase of death is higher as well. And so we are trying to get more of the people who would occupy our hospitals vaccinated first. But any person who wants to be vaccinated can have a conversation with their GP about their personal risk, and AstraZeneca is available to them.
And also, Minister, Kirsty's audio is not great. We can't hear you properly, Kirsty, but I understand you also asked if the rumour is correct that there is going to be something released next week to help specifically the childcare area. If you can comment on that rumour.
I'm not sure if the Commonwealth is making or proposing to make any announcements, but our business support packages are non-specific. So all of the businesses, whether they be a childcare operator or a construction operator or a micro business, that information from the New South Wales government is out there. The gap fee arrangements, and if there are some supports coming from the Commonwealth, I'm not familiar with those, but that might well be the case. I wouldn't rule it out.
Great, thank you. And we have just a further follow-on question from our micro business owners. Have you, or you may have already answered it, do you have an idea once the application's made, what sort of time frame, particularly those micro business owners, are looking at for payments? Is it sort of within a week, or is there any estimate?
Yeah, it would be once your application is processed. Based on my discussions with the head of the department that looks after Service New South Wales yesterday, payments are being distributed pretty quickly. And just to be clear, those micro payments are covering from the beginning of the lockdown as well.
Great, thank you. And the next question's from Eric Wright in relation to COVID safe plans in workplaces.
Yeah, hi, Stuart. I'm Eric Wright from the PM Community College, you know that, but just for others. So we did a bit of work last year during the lockdown, particularly with businesses where their English wasn't great. Their sense of doing a COVID safe plan was to put their name on a form to, through a webinar, bring them into an implementation. How do you get your employees to follow it? So I guess from your comment earlier where you've been talking to businesses, do you have a sense whether people are needing that support again, or have we got it all together now?
I think we've seen a lot of work done in multilingual activities. The multilingual arrangements can be set up through Service New South Wales, particularly for QR code check-ins. My strong advice to everyone, if you haven't done it already, you need to be establishing your own QR code check-in. It will save you a lot of administrative time. You can download your QR code check-in arrangements through Service New South Wales. You can also download a COVID safety plan for your workplace. That COVID safety plan can be, it's a pro forma. It allows you to establish things that are specific to your workplace, and where the government has stipulated some conditions, they are identifiable on that COVID safety plan, and those plans are available in a number of different languages. So I would definitely, from a Chamber of Commerce perspective, be encouraging people through your normal communications to establish QR code check-ins, particularly as we move into an environment post-lockdown where mobility will start to move around again. You want to be able to continue to use that system. It helps astronomically with our COVID tracing and our contact tracing capability.
Great, thank you. And we've just got a few minutes left. I just had another question from a business owner, actually from Nepean Office Furniture, Minister, and they're actually classified as essential office supplies. However, the question is, if somebody's ordered bulky goods, are they able to take them inside a premises? And if it's an elderly person that has an injury, are they able to actually assemble them for the customer?
Yeah, so the public health order allows for the maintenance and repair upgrades for people who are not able to do it themselves, either by way of age, impairment, disability, existing health issues. So I don't see any. There's no reason why that couldn't take place. Obviously, anyone doing any form of delivery, our overwhelming preference is that you have contactless engagement. I would, however, suggest for that particular business that if you're entering a person's home, that you do take COVID safe protocols. Make sure you're wearing a mask. Consider minimising impacts, social distance away from the person in the household whilst the product is being constructed, so that it can be delivered. It's a bit like if a person's fridge breaks down and in the middle of the lockdown. You can still order your fridge from Harvey Norman. We don't expect that a truck will turn up and leave it on your front doorstep, and you've got to work out how to get the fridge inside. These click and collect and delivery arrangements are all accounted for in the public health order. Just please make sure you give consideration to the risk of COVID spread whilst you're delivering it.
Yes, and she posted that in her email that they're following all COVID safe practices.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
So,
and we're just, sorry.
No, that's it.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we're just wrapping up. There was just a couple of comments that you may not be able to see in the chat box. One was from Sam Maria. Just a big shout out. Thank you to your colleagues and in particular all frontline workers during the current pandemic. And also just some feedback from Kirsty. Sorry about my audio issues, and for your response to the questions, and she'll feed back to Stacey if you can send through some further information. Other than that, we're just right on 1 p.m. So thank you so much.
I do see there is one question I've just seen there about landscaping. Landscapers are included in the construction arrangements, as are people who are doing non-urgent or non-emergency repairs, maintenance, cleaning and upgrades. All of those are not currently permitted under the public health order. So landscaping is not a permitted exercise at the moment.
Yeah, I think that was a confusion in relation to Miru Midigar's question, but they were also in conjunction with the training and some computer-based training. So that was in relation to that response, I think.
Yeah, I think if I was going to, the practicality of landscaping is it's not urgent. So it doesn't have to happen now. So therefore, the public health order at the moment through that construction, maintenance, repair and cleaning arrangements captures the landscaping provision. But as we discussed with the training, it's educational work. If it can't be done from the home, it can be done in the workplace.
Great, thank you. And just finally, thank you. We're right on 1 p.m. Thank you for everyone for attending, and thank you to Minister Ayres for answering the questions on the hop. And just a reminder to email Stacey if anybody would like that further information passed on, any of the questions or the further clarification straight through to Stacey.
Yeah, and my electorate office is also available for emails. If you've got questions or things that you're unsure about, please shoot them through. There's some more generic questions that have come out of this that you can shoot through to Stacey, or we can coordinate a response to that. I'm more than happy to continue to utilise and engage the chamber to provide information out to businesses. I also want to say thank you for everything that you do. I know we do talk a lot about frontline service workers in this environment, whether they be health professionals or police officers or any kind of the uniform workers. But ultimately, the people that will allow us to recover from COVID are those people that employ other people, the small business owners right across the state. And that's very much my focus. Whether you're a sole trader or whether you're a small business or a growing business, we need to keep you as strong as you possibly can be through what is quite frankly horrendous period of time, so that when we come out of this, we get an opportunity for you to bring those people back into work, start paying them and become active contributors to our community and our economy. And so I just want to thank you all for your resilience. We will get through this. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that it won't be painful or sound a bit Pollyanna-ish. It's going to be really tough, but we will get you through it.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks again, Minister Ayres.
Cool. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers.